Well, welcome everybody to the 10th episode of the Civil Matters podcast. And today we have Maureen Durbin, the Director of Operations for Adolfson Peterson Construction. Welcome, Maureen.
Thank you very much.
Could you take a few minutes or seconds to kind of get us caught up to where you are today in your career? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I've been with AP for 15 years now, and I started my career, I went to college at Texas Tech to get my degree in architecture. And I did some internships with some architecture firms, worked at a firm briefly after college, and decided that I didn't love working at the firms as much as I loved when they sent me out on job sites to go check out the construction sites. So I quickly pivoted and started to work for a company that built wind turbines. International company. We built them all over the world, and I was heavily involved in projects that we built all over the United States. Spent about a year and a half there. They got bought out, and then I moved to Adolfson Peterson, and I've been there for 15 years. Been there since.
Where in the country did you travel doing wind farms?
We built in California, Wyoming, Oklahoma, a lot of places where you have plains and a lot of wind. Yeah.
How did you get initially interested in construction? Were your parents involved in construction, or was it just a thing?
Just an interest, yeah. I thought about that a lot, and I never had anybody in my life that was heavily influenced by construction. I didn't have anybody who I grew up with, who took me around to their job sites or anything. I just was born with an interest, specifically in architecture, very born with an interest in how buildings look, the different styles of buildings, different styles of architecture, and how it all goes together. And I've just always pursued that interest.
What has it been like when you first started in your career as a woman in construction? What was it like being in the industry?
It was very different 18 years ago when I started to what it is now, and it's evolved in a really great way now. Back then it wasn't terrible. It was different. It was not common to have women in construction out in the field. And even when I started at AP, I was the only female in operations. So now we have a handful of women in operations. But back then, when I would go out on job sites, and of course I'm also fresh out of college, young, inexperienced, and I would walk on a job site and I would just get looked at like I was an alien. Who are you? What are you doing here? Are you lost? Do you belong here? And then I'd have to say, yeah, I'm with the general contractor and I work here. So back then, working with the people I worked with and the industry as a whole, it's just really grown quite a bit to be an industry that I like to say construction it's an industry that has a lot of intelligent people, not just IQ intelligence, but also EQ and AQ. So their emotional intelligence, their adaptability, what construction workers do now and what they are responsible for is extremely impressive, because how we build buildings, the technology that goes into buildings, the advancement of materials and how we put projects together has grown so much in the last 20 years. And so the people have had to grow with it. And so I think construction used to be more, blue collar, hardworking type of field, which it is at its core. But the people who really manage these projects and who oversee everything are very, very talented people. So I say that to say when you work with that caliber of person, then the emotional intelligence, the adaptability comes with it. And I've just seen a really positive shift in the industry to be more inclusive of all different types of people.
Are there any catalysts that you think have perpetuated that, have driven that?
Yeah, I think there's been a big shift in society, just in conversations in general, about accepting, people with who they are, and diversity is a good thing. And, women in heavily male populated fields can be a good thing, and equality. I mean, there's been a lot of conversations about that socially. I also think social media has given a lot of people an insider's view into what different industries can look like. And people who may have thought, well, I'm not going to get involved in that. I'm not sure how I would fit into it. Now they can really see what it's like to be in that world through social media. And they think, okay, yeah, that's really interesting to me. And it just kind of opens up more doors because you have exposure to things that you didn't have exposure to before. And that brings in more people that may not have brought in previously.
Are you seeing more women coming in the industry now?
Yes, very much so, which is fantastic. And not just more women, but just more people in general who aren't what you would traditionally expect as a construction worker, just a lot more diversity from their degrees. It's not always construction science degrees. You have architecture, you have engineering degrees that are starting to come into construction, and they're seeing it through a different lens and they understand the other side of the coin. So it provides a lot of good insight into how they approach a problem because they kind of understand what the other side's looking for. And you see a lot of diversity in people's backgrounds, and yeah, a lot more women joining.
Do you have any thoughts on why there's more women joining the industry now?
I I if I were to guess, I would just think it's that women are more interested in STEM industries in general, anything to do with science, technology, engineering, mathematics, all that stuff. It's women just maybe are more interested in it. And who's not interested in construction? Like, you drive by a job site and you see everything that's going on. You see this massive building getting built and all the people who work really hard on it. It's intriguing to a lot of people. And that's probably why I got into it in the beginning, was I was fascinated by all the moving parts with it.
How does your family feel about you being in construction?
I
Did
didn't
they have like a different plan for you or wanted you to do something different?
I mean, they were probably all definitely thought I would pursue architecture and stay with architecture. And then when I pivoted, they're like, oh, okay, you're gonna do construction. But they totally support me with it. It still is a fun topic of conversation because you don't look at me and think construction person. I'm aware of that. I know that I don't give off construction vibes, but when I tell people, I like that element of them underestimating me, because then they're perplexed. They're like, you work in construction?
I would, I would challenge that a little bit. If somebody talks to you for 5 minutes, I think it makes sense.
Oh, good.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I appreciate that.
Do you think, this wasn't on the list of questions today, but it just kind of hit me. There's always, I say always, there's been for a long time this stigma with construction workers, right? It's always like this dirty job, the micro show. And it feels like that's shifting a little bit. But I'd like to get your thought. I don't know that anything's really changed. Like, construction's still construction.
Mm-hmm.
Things have advanced, technology has advanced. But, pick a year, pick a decade, the technology that they had then was also the most technologically advanced at that time. Do you think there's been a ton that's changed, or is it just society changing their perception?
I think because of the intensity of projects, condensed schedules, I think especially post-COVID, where architecture firms experienced a lot of layoffs, and then when everything started to ramp back up and they were understaffed. And so that put a lot of pressure, like me living through those times, it put a lot of pressure on the general contractor to be very, very creative and to take on responsibilities that weren't necessarily theirs before. It shifted the way that we approached a project. It kind of shifted our roles a little bit. Where in the past, the architect was responsible for X and the contractor was responsible for Y. We kind of stayed in our camp, so you respected each other. And now we're much more blended together, I think, than we were pre-COVID. I think that's a good thing. But when you start to have these people who they're out on this job site, and I'm talking as a general contractor, or superintendents, or project managers, they're on this job site, they're responsible for so many things: the safety of everyone who's out there, the quality of the project, keeping the schedule on track, all the equipment that's going around, and just, you have to make sure the project is staying in budget, and you're dealing with design changes and the clients changing their mind. Those are a lot of moving parts that we have to be responsible for. And you have to make 1,000 decisions every 10 minutes, micro decisions, big decisions. and you have to collaborate with a lot of people. So it started to really pull on a lot of creative strings within a person on how to adapt to all of it. And I think as people, it was kind of whiplash when we first were dealing with it post-COVID.
Mm.
And then we've learned to adapt to it. And now when we hire people, that's kind of the baseline now. That's the standard, is this is what our industry is like, and this is how it is. And it's really fun and it's really rewarding. It's also a lot of hard work.
Right. Are there any opportunities in the industry that you think is overlooked?
I think pre-construction is heavily overlooked. Most people, when they want to come into construction, they immediately think, all right, out in the field, hard hat, safety vest, that's what I do. And of course, that has a draw. But the pre-construction department of every general contractor is vital to the success of a general contractor, because they're really the person who is dealing with the success of a project and the launch of a project early on. So they're dealing with the developers. When a developer is just talking concepts, developer wants just a number per square foot for a product type. And they're talking through different approaches they could take and different areas that they could build or different material types they could use. And they try to work with that developer to really give the developer what they want to make it fit within their investment goals and pro forma.
Mm-hmm.
And then they try to sell that and say, all right, here's our construction group, and they can build that for you, and they'll be your partner through the construction process. So the pre-construction side, it really is, it's a bridge between the developer or architect and the contractor. And you have to know a little bit of both worlds, and you have to be really good at problem solving and collaboration.
Have you ever felt like you had to prove yourself in this industry?
Certainly have felt like I had to prove myself, especially when I was younger. I felt that way. And now that, of course, could be I was younger and experienced, a little more uncomfortable in situations.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I walk into a room and I'm often the only female in the room. And now I'm comfortable with it and I'm fine. And I work with people who are huge supporters of me. But yes, early on, I definitely felt like I had to prove myself many a time.
Do you ever feel like you have imposter syndrome?
Oh, yes. Yeah, yes.
How do you combat that?
So I've learned through the years with imposter syndrome, the best way that I can manage it is I tell myself to take a deep breath and just say, you're here for a reason. You were invited for a reason. You were included in this conversation for a reason. Nobody just, opened the door and just let you wander in. They asked you to come. And so you have something to value that they wanted you to be here for. And you just need to have confidence in yourself that you can go and be who you are and bring what you can bring.
And what about walking into a room, whether you're at a conference or some kind of event, or even if it's a company event, most rooms in this industry is full of men,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you build yourself up and carry that confidence?
Some of it is fake it till you make it. I think anyone, even if the room was reversed and it was all women and a guy walked in, he kind of like, whoa, I'm not amongst my people, right? I'm not around people who are like me. And for anybody to walk into a room and to be around a bunch of people that aren't like them, you probably feel a little bit uneasy, but I
feel uneasy either way. It's
true.
just not my thing.
You walk into a room with anybody
right.
that you don't know. Yeah. But to walk into a room with a bunch of guys, one, I know what I signed up for. I chose construction and I chose this industry, and then I know that it's a male populated industry. And so going into that, I have thick skin. You have to have thick skin to work in construction. So you work in an industry where you have a bunch of guys. They probably have a lot of interests in things, football, different types of sports, hunting, you name it, right? I grew up around a lot of that, so I'm able to have conversations with them about the things that we may have some commonality in. And that's usually the easiest icebreaker, is you just start throwing out topics and see what sticks between you and that other person, and then you can have a conversation.
What challenges that you faced in the industry have sort of shaped you? Can you think of some ideas there that you can share?
Yeah, early on in my career, I was building a project, and it was a product type that we hadn't built before, and we really haven't built since. It was a very difficult product type. And I was a project field engineer on that job. So I was probably 2 years in, had some experience, but not a lot. And out on that job, the schedule was very condensed and it was a phased turnover. And during that project, 2 superintendents ended up leaving and the project manager ended up leaving. And at one point, it was just myself and the new superintendent who came in, and we were trying to keep the job on schedule and absorb a lot of responsibilities that inherently had not been ours. And I grew immensely through that job. I mean, that job was very tense because I remember coming home at the end of every day and you've been out in the field, so you're hot, you're sweaty, you're tired, and then waking up in the morning and just kind of feeling the dread in your stomach because you want that job to be done, and it's so challenging, and you just think, where's the light at the end of the tunnel? But now, you survived it, and you look back on it, and you realize you learn a lot more from the hard stuff, and you learn a lot more about learning what not to do versus learning what to do because a project went well. So there were a lot of big insights I had from that project.
When you came into the construction side of things, when you left architecture and you came into construction, did you feel like you were thrown out of the boat and were basically told to sink or swim?
Mm-hmm. It's pretty typical in our industry because you hire for a need, and that need is to go build a project, and then you need them to be out on site to go build the project. So the onboarding process is pretty small. You don't have the luxury of time. You don't have the luxury to bring somebody under your wing and just walk them through your day step by step for weeks on end. You really have to say, all right, I need you to go do these things and go figure it out and go. I'm here if you need me, but go figure it out. And so we've talked about revamping an onboarding process. We do make tweaks, but ultimately I think the biggest help with it is based on who you hire. So when we hire, we really put a lot of emphasis on hiring for culture. Is that person driven? Are they self-motivated? Are they self-starters? Are they interested in taking control of their own career and their own destiny versus me giving them this roadmap of everything that they have to achieve? Because that's not how construction works. I mean, every day you wake up and you could have a lovely schedule of what you want today to be, and then it just gets totally obliterated because something happened on site. So when we bring, especially young people in, we try to tell them and set that expectation. This is what it is like. However, I am here to help you. Your project team is here to help you. And you have to ask the question, but you also have to be motivated enough to go learn what you need to learn and to put yourself in situations where you can absorb and you get exposure to things that you didn't know before. That's the best way to learn.
Do you feel that there's been a little bit of degradation on that? The stick-to-itiveness, the inquisitive. It seems, from my perspective, it does seem, over the years, that's one thing that is maybe regressing rather than progress. Like we've made a lot of progress in our industry over the years, but, curious your take from your view. Are you seeing that regress too? The whole, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
The grittiness.
Yep. We certainly see it. And I don't really know what the cause of it is. I mean, I've got to assume it's more technology. So people are living behind their screens more and less human interaction and that kind of stuff. But we certainly see it. And we try to weed it out really early. So if we see indications of that when we're interviewing someone or in internships, like that's a great time to really get to know an employee. We've had a lot of great employees who were interns with us before, and they performed so well. They enjoyed working with us. We enjoyed having them. And now they've been full-time employees with us for years. So that's when you really get to see the heart of someone and how they're going to approach a sticky situation. But yes, I think, to be honest, I think we see more of what you're talking about in other departments, not as much in operations. Because again, if you're drawn to ops, you're drawn to being a pretty gritty problem-solving person in general.
I mean, you have to be, right?
You have to be.
If you're gonna make it,
yeah,
you kind of have to be, or it's one of those things that it'll weed people out on its own just by going through it, because
just naturally.
you're either gonna make it or you're not, right?
You either have an interest in being out on a job site amongst all that chaos and seeing what all that looks like, and you want to be in the thick of it, or you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there any career milestones that are especially rewarding to you that you can think of?
Yeah, I would say the my biggest career milestone was when I was 29, I was asked to join our regional leadership team. So we're responsible, for the success of the region and for taking care of our region, our people, our projects, strategizing how we want the years to look, the budget, all those things. And I was asked to join when I was 29, and that was quite monumentous for me, and still a part of that group today. And that is very rewarding. Yeah.
Nice. What's one lesson that construction has taught you that also applies to your personal life?
The biggest lesson, and I try to teach this to my kids too,
Mm.
is there is about 27 different ways you can solve a problem. I mean, just because the first option, the second, the third doesn't work, you need to plan for the fact that something may not work and you need to be able to pivot. But just because something doesn't work doesn't mean that the conversation has ended or you're done and you're stuck. There are many ways you can solve something. They just might be harder ways, but you have to keep at it and you can solve the problem.
What would you tell, you know, anyone out there, that's a woman that's considering construction? Um, Maybe they're thinking construction, but are a little nervous about it and are also thinking maybe design because they're a little intimidated by construction. What would you tell them?
I would tell them, if you have an interest in it, absolutely pursue it. It's a really great industry to work in, and I have said this for years and I'll continue to say it. When you work with people in construction at a good company, you work with some of the best people that I think you could surround yourself with, because these people have, like we've talked about, they have really strong hearts. They care deeply about everything around them. They care about the project they're building. They care about the success of it and that their client's going to be happy. They care about the safety of everybody. Their heart's in the right place. They're morally strong people. They're kind people. And that's who I want to work around. It's an industry where teamwork and collaboration is really what it is at its core. And I can't say that about a ton of other industries. There's space for everybody in construction. And especially in Dallas, even though it's a very competitive city and there's a lot of contractors here, there's space for everyone. And if you're a woman who wants to jump into construction, jump in. You've got there's space for you.
What would this our industry is very relationship based. It's all about the relationships you have and being able to, get out there and meet others and develop those relationships. Um, in the last few decades, more and more we have social media is more and more prevalent. Um, Folks, not everybody, but a fair amount of folks kind of hide behind the computer a little bit and have lost a little bit of the personal skills.
Mm-hmm.
If what would you say to, or what would you, how would you coach somebody up on that? Like that's maybe a little nervous about this industry because of how personal it is and relationship based it is.
It's working a muscle is all it is. And truly any industry, if you want to grow in your career, regardless of what industry you're in, if you want to reach a certain leadership level or reach a certain milestone, you have to be good at talking with other people. That's the key component. So networking or building personal relationships is working a muscle. You have to get out there, you have to do it. Some days it's harder than other days. Some days you really don't feel like doing it, but you have to go do it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I've also taught myself that to go and build relationships with people, it's not going in and having an expectation that you're going to achieve something with the conversation.
Mm.
It's just going in and saying hi and chatting for a few minutes. And it's okay if you've not learned much from that because you're starting to build a relationship with somebody. Being goal oriented, I used to think when I was younger, I had to go in and I had to learn something and I had to gain something from having that conversation. That's not necessarily true.
Is that one of your favorite parts of the business?
The networking part,
Uh,
I can't say that's one of my favorite parts. However, I can say that because I've made a lot of relationships with people, it is really cool that when you run into them, and we typically see each other in work environments, but they remember things about you and they remember things about your life and they really care about who you are. So that part it's very refreshing. It makes you think, okay, well, this is why it's worth it.
One thing that's interesting to me is this, the industry is very relationship based, right? But everybody I talk to, it's kind of universal. No one really enjoys that part of it, going and meet new people and developing those relationships. But we all acknowledge that it's one of the key aspects of our industry.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's kind of funny.
Well, I think it's also due to the type of person who works in construction. That type of person is a driven, goal-oriented chaser, problem solver. So their brain's always kind of thinking like, what's on my list? What do I need to do? Where do I need to go after this? What email do I need to respond to? And that person, you have to put that aside and then be focused in the moment. So I just think inherently who they are in their DNA, they're probably always going to struggle a little bit with that, no matter how hard they work at it.
That's a good point. Do you have any thoughts on where we're headed as an industry? Any?
Every time I think we're starting to see a trend, it shifts a little bit. Of course, right now, data centers are the thing, and they're taking up a lot of resources, and a lot of money is in data centers, and it's where a lot of energy and focus is, and it's fair, rightly so. But I'm curious to see when this buzz will die down a little bit with data centers, and then what's going to come up next from it, because you still have to have hospitals, still need schools, So curious to see what's going to come on the heels of that.
I'm curious too. My bet's on manufacturing.
Yeah, I could see that too.
Yeah. Well, do you have any final thoughts or parts of wisdom to bestow upon all the women out there that are either in the industry or considering it?
I would say the best thing you could do is to make yourself accessible to people, to be there to help them. If they call you, they're calling you for a reason. If they need something from you, if they send you an email, if they're looping you into something, it's because they value your opinion. They want you to know. They thought about you, and be a part of that and lean into that. And if you don't know something, go learn it, because the more you learn and the more you know, the more people want to rely on you, and the more you'll get brought in to many different environments, and that will help you grow immensely in your career.
Well said. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And
Thank you.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah.